Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Have you ever watched a major studio meltdown in real time? Kind where a single casting choice, mixed with relentless controversy, ends up shaking the entire entertainment industry? That's exactly what happened when Disney decided to revive its oldest classic and cast a rising star named Rachel Zegler. Before the cameras even started rolling, red flags popped up. Her polarizing public image, the modern twists rumored to be forced on a beloved fairy tale, and the swirling drama about woke storytelling.
She was, as woke as they are.
Yet nobody quite anticipated just how quickly this Snow White remake would slide from dream project to looming disaster. First, fans were hesitant but curious. Disney's known for rewriting its own playbook, especially when it comes to these lavish live-action remakes. Many were excited to see how the studio would handle a nearly century-old story, perhaps adding a bit more nuance to a rather straightforward princess tale.
And, the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
But soon, skepticism turned to outrage. Rachel Zegler's candid interviews and scathing remarks about the original movie painted a different picture, one of an actress who seemed to resent the very character she was meant to portray. Then, add in the heated political rants, and you had a public relations nightmare that not even Disney's massive PR machinery could effectively contain.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
Today, it's safe to say this fiasco goes far beyond one celebrity's commentary. It's a stark wake-up call for a company that used to hold a near-universal reputation for family-friendly magic. How did a legendary fairy tale transform into a polarizing showdown? And why did Disney bet so heavily on an actress many accused of being unlikable? Strap in, because this is the story of how a once golden opportunity became an embarrassing cautionary tale, and how the fallout reached places no one saw coming.
I don't think they're going to buy it. I don't think they're going to watch it. I don't think they're going to like it.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable.
Snow White holds an almost sacred status in Hollywood history. Released in 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was Walt Disney's first full-length animated feature film. It wasn't just a success, it was a groundbreaking moment that changed animation forever. To this day, older generations remember seeing that bright, colorful spectacle on screen for the first time, while younger viewers still discover its old-fashioned charm through family marathons.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
The star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public.
In short, Snow White stands as Disney's proud heritage and one of the most recognized tales in popular culture. When word got out that Disney was planning a live-action adaptation, reactions were mixed. Through all, the company had churned out several big-budget remakes. Some soared, like The Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast, while others stumbled, including the more recent Mulan.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
A new version of Snow White would require a delicate balance, respecting the original's vintage innocence while updating the story for today's audiences. On paper, it sounded manageable. In practice, though, it would open a Pandora's box of controversy. Enter Rachel Zegler, a young actress who had recently stepped into the spotlight thanks to a Golden Globe win. Upon her casting, excitement flared.
You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up.
Spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend.
Here was a fresh face, a rising star with a captivating singing voice. Early buzz framed her as the perfect princess to lead the next big Disney blockbuster. But from the outset, some fans raised eyebrows about changes hinted in the new script. Would they keep the dwarfs? Would the prince play the same central role? More importantly, how would Zegler handle the original's old-fashioned romance that, for many, was part of its unique charm?
A few lessons for Disney. Number one, stop cannibalizing all your old IP. It's really bad. It's really bad business. Number two, please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man.
Still, few could have predicted that the controversy would escalate beyond creative decisions. Long before the film wrapped, Zegler's personal viewpoints began to overshadow any discussion of cinematography or costume design. Suddenly, social media was ablaze with debates about her attitudes, her outspoken nature, and whether her approach to Snow White was a betrayal of the original. The fairy tale shimmer was dimming, and fast. But that was only the start, murmured fans who watched the saga unfold online. 'Cause once Zegler's remarks went public, all bets were off.
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings. I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love Snow White.
The biggest criticisms weren't just about the film's story arcs. They were directed right at her personal statements. And in the world of Hollywood PR, negative press can be a dagger, especially when it's aimed at a cherished icon like Snow White. First glance, Rachel Zegler had everything a modern-day princess might need: a resonant singing voice, a youthful aura, and that intangible spark some equate with star power.
If Disney wants to make more woke films that tank at the box office, they are more than welcome to do that, but maybe think of an original idea.
So why did her shine fade so rapidly in the eyes of the public? Some point to her interviews, where she often delivered blunt critiques of the very fairy tale she'd been hired to bring to life. She once mentioned in a widely circulated interview that the original Snow White was creepy and that the prince practically stalked her. While some might applaud modernization or reinterpretation, her matter-of-fact tone rubbed many longtime Disney supporters the wrong way.
This truly is the worst casting, maybe, in the history of the film industry.
They heard contempt instead of gentle revision. Then came the repeated references to how the original 1937 storyline was old-fashioned and how she considered this new version an improvement for feminists everywhere. It wasn't necessarily the idea of a strong female lead that caused friction. After all, plenty of fans appreciate empowerment arcs. The real problem was how these comments came across: condescending and disrespectful to the film that started Disney's success.
Rachel Zegler, she's an asshole.
One quote after another, Zegler seemed more intent on exposing the flaws of the original than celebrating its enduring legacy. Fans labeled her approach as angry, whiny, or ungrateful. Social media amplified these perceptions. Fan sites and YouTube channels dissected her soundbites, pointing to an air of entitlement. Felt like Zegler, who was somewhat new to mainstream fame, was tearing down a classic from a place of moral superiority.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts like her life is so bad.
Statements about refusing to revolve her storyline around a prince only fueled the debate. Some loved the evolution. Others saw it as dismissing the traditional romance that defined the original. Clash between nostalgia and social commentary started overshadowing everything else, and Zegler's image took hit after hit. Then there was her tone. Her critics argued that she didn't just want to reimagine Snow White, she wanted a platform to air personal grudges. The actress, only in her early 20s, found herself at the epicenter of a backlash that grew stronger with every interview clip. Media outlets ran headlines about her being too woke, or claiming she harbored deranged viewpoints on classic Disney heroines. Fervent defenders argued that she was just telling it like it is, but the damage was done. Her social media presence turned into a battleground, and the worst was yet to come. And just when fans thought the interviews were intense, some posted on Twitter, that was nothing compared to what happened next. Indeed, the dwarfs controversy was just around the corner, and it would ignite an even bigger firestorm, one Zegler couldn't easily quell. For as long as the story has existed, the 7 dwarfs have been a central element of the Snow White tale. They aren't just side characters, they're iconic, each with a distinct personality that has resonated with children for generations. From Doc to Grumpy to Dopey, these roles are beloved, comedic, and integral to the fairy tale magic. Enter Peter Dinklage, a very talented actor who famously portrayed Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. In an interview, he criticized Disney for what he perceived as continuing an outdated portrayal of dwarfs. He took issue with the notion that it was progressive to cast a Latina Snow White, yet still rely on 7 dwarfs living in a cave. His words struck a chord. Disney, already jittery about any controversy, swiftly changed course. The dwarfs were reportedly replaced with a set of CGI magical creatures. That might have sounded forward-thinking on paper, but it caused its own avalanche of problems. Little person actors across the industry voiced their anger, stating that these roles were not just a major employment opportunity but also an iconic representation. One actor vented online that he never asked for the dwarfs to be removed. Another pointed out that Dinklage, an A-list millionaire, might not represent the perspective of working little person performers who rely on these kinds of roles for livelihood. The outcry was palpable. Instead of neatly sidestepping stereotypes, Disney ended up alienating part of the community they claimed to protect. Rachel Zegler, in the midst of this storm, publicly praised the decision to move away from backward stereotypes. She celebrated it as a step forward, doubling down on the modernization stance she'd displayed in interviews about the prince and romance. But that applause struck many as out of touch, especially among the smaller community who felt they were being cut out of potential roles. It looked to some like Zegler was talking down from a pedestal, ignoring the financial reality of less well-known actors. The general public found the entire situation bizarre. One group wanted classic dwarfs preserved for nostalgia and authenticity. Another group demanded sensitivity toward dwarfs' portrayal. And yet another group of smaller actors lamented losing roles because big studios prefer to dodge any controversy by erasing dwarfs entirely. Everyone seemed unhappy. Fueled by Zegler's unwavering stance, the backlash was unstoppable. Tabloids latched onto the story, fans took sides, and the production itself became a swirling chaos. Disney's once charmed quest to adapt a beloved classic was turning into a cautionary tale of how fast inclusive measures can backfire when mishandled. Yet, unbelievably, the biggest blow to the film's reputation was still on the horizon, this time revolving around political rants and more personal drama on social media. By this stage, the Snow White remake was already knee-deep in controversies about the script, the dwarfs, and Rachel Zegler's repeated criticisms of the original film. But then, an entirely separate storm erupted, this time around the actress's outspoken political views. Everyone knows Hollywood has its share of politically active stars, but Zegler's online comments took it to another level. In late 2024, as discussions about the upcoming U.S. presidential election heated up, she posted a series of fiery messages on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. One post in particular addressed supporters of former President Donald Trump, telling them they didn't deserve peace and hoping they'd experience ongoing misfortune for the next 4 years. She followed it up with a remark that basically told them to stay away from her upcoming film if they disagreed. It wasn't just harsh, it was downright alienating to a massive swath of potential moviegoers. Critics and audiences from across the political spectrum wondered, why would an actress contracted to star in a family-focused Disney film publicly insult an enormous section of the American public? Such posts can instantly shift from personal opinions to a brand liability. Sure enough, popular personalities on talk shows and YouTube channels pounced on the story. One well-known commentator summarized the sentiment. Like it or not, if you're trying to sell a Disney classic to families, telling half the country you hope they suffer is a pretty questionable move. To make matters worse, Zegler's posts were laced with pointed jabs, borderline profanity, and language that felt far from the sweet, family-friendly image Disney typically encourages. The negativity exploded overnight. Hashtags calling to boycott the Snow White remake gained serious momentum. Some fans who had been on the fence now fully committed to steering clear of the film. It wasn't just about politics either. People felt the real issue was the perceived arrogance, a multi-million-dollar star telling paying customers to stay away if they disagreed with her worldview. Disney, usually swift in damage control, seemed stuck. They neither confirmed nor denied official reprimands, but quietly tried to quell the uproar by limiting Zegler's press appearances. Insiders whispered about frustration within the company, hinting that some executives were scrambling to do last-minute spin. However, every time Rachel tried to clarify her remarks, it reignited the controversy. "I got emotional, that's all," was a typical apology, but many critics claimed it was far too little, too late. The public had made up its mind. Snow White's lead actress wanted them gone if they didn't share her politics. At that point, fans across the board started calling the entire project a lost cause. Discussion turned from complaining about dwarfs and changes to the prince storyline to calling for Zegler's outright dismissal. With filming completed, Disney was in a bind. Reshoots would be astronomically expensive, and they couldn't exactly replace the star. The release date, originally set for 2024, was pushed to 2025, fueling speculation that the studio hoped the rage might subside in the interim. But if they thought time would heal the controversy, they were very wrong. And just when you'd think it couldn't get worse, posted one viral account, the production nightmares and ballooning budgets started to leak out. Indeed, the behind-the-scenes chaos was about to grab headlines, giving the Snow White remake an unfortunate trifecta of bad press, internal turmoil, public hostility toward the actress, and a sky-high budget that loomed like a ticking time bomb. A troubled star is enough to worry any studio, but for Disney, the headaches went beyond personality clashes. Word circulated about frequent reshoots, script revisions, and last-minute changes mandated by top executives scrambling to salvage the film's reputation. Some rumors suggested that entire segments with the prince character were cut or significantly reduced, partly due to the new independent Snow White direction, and partly to pacify Zegler's public stances. Other whispers spoke of set mishaps and technical glitches. One widely reported incident involved a fire that broke out on set, leading to halted filming for weeks and a colossal repair bill. These kinds of production issues might be manageable when the public is supportive. But in this case, every new delay or budget increase felt like yet another log tossed onto the fire of controversy. The film's budget ballooned to over $170 million, not counting marketing expenses. That's a lot of risk, especially for a film whose star was fast becoming toxic to a significant chunk of moviegoers. Disney's predicament was glaring. Should they funnel even more money into reshoots to polish the film's final product, or cut their losses and hope audiences would show up out of curiosity? Some insiders claimed an emergency meeting was held with Disney's top brass, perhaps even with CEO Bob Iger, where the possibility of shelving the project was allegedly put on the table. Cost of writing off a nearly finished film was astronomical, though, and no official plan emerged from the rumor mill. Meanwhile, the marketing team found themselves in an impossible bind. Typically, the star of a Disney princess film would be front and center in every teaser, interview, and poster. But here, promotional spots were quietly pivoting to emphasize the magical world of Disney more than the star herself. Posters began featuring silhouettes or minimal close-ups, an unusual move for a big-budget princess adaptation. Some fans joked that Disney was hiding Rachel Zegler from the public eye, further fueling speculation that the studio desperately wanted to contain the damage. Late-night comedy shows and social media accounts latched onto every sign of trouble, often lampooning Zegler's interviews side by side with the film's glitchy CGI dwarfs. The message was clear. This Snow White wasn't an enchanting dream but a costly carnival of errors. By the time the final test screenings wrapped, rumors suggested tepid responses. Pacing felt disjointed, comedic elements were overshadowed by preachy undertones, and the digital stand-ins for dwarfs came across as cheaply rendered. None of that was good news for a $170 million family film hoping for an easy box office win. If you thought the controversies would stop people from seeing it, just wait until you hear about the opening weekend, posted a known box office analyst a few weeks before the official premiere. And that's precisely where the story led next. A box office showdown that would reveal whether Disney's gamble on a modern Snow White, and on Rachel Zegler, would pay off or flop spectacularly. When the release date finally arrived, after more than a year's worth of rumors, political tirades, and behind-the-scenes scrambling, industry watchers braced for impact. Optimistic analysts still predicted a decent opening weekend, banking on brand recognition and the princess factor. Others, however, forecasted doom, citing intense boycotts and a leading lady whose public relations fiascos had alienated a wide audience. The final results confirmed the worst fears. Snow White opened at just $43 million domestically, a figure that fell laughably short of the roughly $150 million many had initially expected for a brand as big as Disney's. Considering the film's production costs, which some believe exceeded $200 million once marketing was tallied up, this was nothing short of a catastrophe. Empty theaters, unimpressed families, and a wave of negative reviews spelled trouble that no amount of post-release marketing could fix. Critics weren't kind. Some described the film as a hollow retelling weighed down by preachy messaging. Others lamented the lifeless CGI stand-ins for the Seven Dwarfs. Even the typically forgiving Disney faithful struggled to find praise, describing Rachel Zegler's performance as listless and the romance angle, stripped away, feeling forced. For years, fans had criticized Disney's reliance on remakes, and this debacle seemed to validate every complaint. It wasn't merely a financial flop. It symbolized the diminishing returns of pumping out live-action versions of classics without respecting what made them magical in the first place. Online, the backlash was swift. Videos dissecting what went wrong with Snow White and how Rachel Zegler tanked a Disney classic racked up millions of views in days. Parents shared that their kids, who once adored the original story, showed little interest in the new film. Merchandise piled up in clearance bins, plush versions of magical creatures sat unsold, lacking the charm of the iconic dwarfs. The meltdown was undeniable and, for Disney, humiliating. The biggest shock, though, was how universal the disappointment was. Traditionalists felt offended by the film's disdain for the classic romance. Progressive viewers criticized what they saw as shallow, token attempts at inclusivity, because if you don't, you risk losing not just a film's profit margin but the trust and goodwill of audiences who once believed in Disney's promise of happily ever after. So what do you think? Should Hollywood ditch these remakes entirely, or is there still a chance to strike a balance between tradition and today's values? Did Rachel Zegler's public missteps alone derail this film, or were there deeper issues at play from the start? Let's hear your take on how a dream project turned into a cautionary epic fail.